Everyone, I'm Maria McLachlan, and 5 years ago today I was assaulted by three trans activists at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. This event changed the course of my remaining life and what I wanted to do with it. It also piqued trans countless people, and I feel kind of obligated to mark it in some way, so I've decided to tell a bit of my own peak trans story. Before I do, I also want to mention that today is the 3-year anniversary of the death of our much loved and missed sister, the feminist legend Magdalene Burns. I knew at the time that Magdalene was in a hospice and expected to die at any time. And although I don't believe in spiritual or metaphysical stuff, I had already said a dozen times that I bet she dies on that day, that effing day that I already hated remembering. And so it came to pass. That day in 2019 was also the day I posted my first ever attempt at a video on YouTube, which I had made specifically to mark the 2-year anniversary of the assault on me. And okay, it was just me reading a poem by Iris Child about my assault, accompanied by my amateurish drawings. But I thought then, that woman who inspired me and gave me the confidence to try making videos doesn't even get to see my very first attempt. Anyway, on May the 6th next year will be the 40th anniversary of Magdalene's birth, and I do hope people will take the opportunity to honour her. We mustn't let her memory die. Okay, as I said, what I've decided to do in this video is tell some of my personal peak trans story. It is a bit of a cheat because I've already told it on my website, but I'm feeling lazy and this will be an easy one to do, so here we go. First of all, April Ashley. I did tell this story in another video I made, the one about James Max and Kelly J. Keane, but for those who missed it, April Ashley, who died at the end of last year, made TV news in 1970 when I was 13 to 14. April Ashley was the first person I'd ever heard of who had been a man and had supposedly become a woman. I was absolutely bewildered by the story. I remember thinking, this was a man and now he's a woman? How'd that happen? I just didn't get it, and I recall it being discussed by my schoolmates the next day, and they were scoffing, expressing disgust, presumably picked up from their parents, and they were referring to April as it. I thought that was horrible, because whatever April was or wasn't, he was still a human being, and we don't refer to human beings as it. The other thing I remember was that the footage the BBC News showed of April Ashley was this. I found it on YouTube. The heavy makeup was normal for that time, as it is today. I think the fur hat was about 10 years out of date fashion-wise. But the sniffing of the flowers, whoever sits there doing that. I remember thinking this person is taking the piss, and it did much to temper whatever sympathy I might have had for April, who, by the way, had only made the headlines because he'd been illegally married to a man, an English aristocrat, who'd successfully got their marriage annulled. In 1972, when I was 15 to 16, I read Germaine Greer's book, The Female Eunuch, and as a result, I became a feminist, and I set about reading a whole bunch of other books. Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, of course, Betty Friedan, books by Juliet Mitchell, Sheila Rowbotham, and a whole bunch of other women whose names don't spring to mind. One book I didn't read back then, by the way, was Janice Raymond's The Transsexual Empire, published in 1979. I've read it now. Anyway, I was still confused about this April Ashley person. How could a man become a woman? Why would he want to? I mean, I think I got the message from all that posing with a flower that he wasn't a manly man, but that was okay. I was fortunate enough to know through friends of my parents that there was more than one way to be a man. In terms of personality and taste, they weren't all masculine like the men in my extended family. But I could not get my head round the notion of a man becoming a woman. One word in The Female Eunuch I remember looking up was the word stereotype, which is a chapter heading, The Stereotype, and that chapter ends with these words. As long as the feminine stereotype remains the definition of the female sex, April Ashley is a woman, regardless of the legal decision ensuing from her divorce. Note the pronoun. She is as much a casualty of the polarity of the sexes as we all are. Disgraced, unsexed, April Ashley is our sister and our symbol. It beggars belief that 50 years later we are still fighting that notion of the feminine stereotype defining what it means to be a woman, fighting it harder than ever. And worse, having grown up with the notion, which I never accepted, that females were inferior. It was better to be male. It was a man's world, and women's role was to be subordinate and decorative. That men oppressed women was as clear as crystal to me then. And now, 50 years later, we are in this bizarre situation in which some of our oppressors, having done nothing whatsoever to help us improve our lot, we did that without their help. Some of them are claiming womanhood as their own, and other men are supporting them, and worst of all, as far as I'm concerned, some women are supporting them. Why are these mostly very young women so blithely betraying the generations of women who fought for the rights they take for granted today? I'm not talking about the ones who haven't actually woken up to what's happening and are still in be kind mode, or even the ones that are going la la la, I'd rather not know, thanks. I'm talking about the ones who turn out at every peaceful event we try to have to hear women's voices. They turn out to support their menfolk, men like these. I took this footage in Bristol. There's a bloke in woman face behaving exactly like a woman, right? And this is someone else's footage in Bristol.
Oh, get in the sea! Die out! You're dinosaurs!
Men who get off on screaming abuse and trying to intimidate us. These are the men you support against women trying to hang on to our rights. I can't tell you how much I despise you, handmaids. See you in Brighton on Sunday. But don't worry, my husband will be with me to protect you from me, and of course the police will totally be there for you too, as they have been so many times before. Nice to have your own goon squad, I guess. Oh, look at this. There'll be another lesbian strength march in Leeds on Saturday, and the nasty, vile, entitled bullies plan to turn up and oppose it. That is lesbophobia. Okay, back to the 70s. Now, I remember reading a piece in Spare Rib magazine, a piece criticising a man who said he was preparing for life as a woman by collecting girly clothes and shoes or whatever. And that piece resonated with me. There's always this emphasis on appearance. They want to grow boobs. They want to wear dresses. They never talked about wanting to take up lower paid jobs whose hours fit in with childcare responsibilities or wanting to wash dishes and do the ironing. In 1979, when I was 22 to 23, I watched a BBC documentary about a man called George going through transition. And while I felt the same irritation about the emphasis he put on appearance, he was a blokey sort of bloke. He wasn't at all effeminate or presenting in a way that might have got him bullied or beaten up. So why choose a path of greater disadvantage? I realised then that it was a mental health issue, and I was sympathetic to George. I didn't see any good reason why he shouldn't be allowed to have the reassignment surgery, if that was really the only way he could find happiness. Here's a clip of him being spoken down to by the psychiatrist in charge at Charing Cross Hospital.
So you feel like a woman?
Yes, I believe everything I do is feminine. I believe I'm a woman inside.
Oh, Michelle, how does it feel to be a woman?
It just feels like being me. Can't describe it as anything else.
You see, she's right. Nobody knows how anybody else feels inside.
Well, I believe I don't actually feel the way a normal man should feel.
Maybe that you identify with certain stereotypes of the female gender role, but that doesn't make you a woman. I'm not prepared to consider any other approach until you've done 1 year as a female from the date which I have in the notes. And if you don't like that, well, then you must find another doctor.
The doctor seemed very unpleasant to me, but he talked sense. Anyway, I don't remember giving a second thought to what then were always called transsexuals for about the next 20 years. Then, after the turn of the century, I became a bit more aware and I gradually became more sympathetic without really thinking about the implications of what I was sympathizing with. And I think that's probably how most people, especially women, are until something makes them hit peak trans. For me, that also came gradually as I was hearing bits and pieces about the trans lobby, which I found disturbing. One of them was the attempts by students at Cardiff to deplatform Germaine Greer in 2015. I've spoken about this in the video I did reacting to Riley Grace Rochelong's video about her. I thought that was absolutely pathetic, but I was very involved with other stuff at the time and I didn't want to divert my time and energy onto anything else. I very much regret that now, not least because if I'd taken the time to research and find out the whole of what was going on, I would have lost a bunch of friends that I needed to lose a lot sooner. Friends who called themselves skeptics, but who ring-fence transgender ideology from skeptical inquiry and treat it like it's their religion. And I would have met many of the fantastic feminist campaigners that I know today a lot sooner. And who knows, maybe I would have been inspired to build the website and this channel a lot earlier. I know that both have helped a lot of people peak, but possibly not as much as Tara Flickwolf and his mates when they assaulted me 5 years ago today. 6 months earlier than that, in March 2017, I'd finally woken up to at least some of the horrors of trans activism. I saw a video of Vancouver Women's Library being attacked by entitled men and their handmaids. I saw the attacks on the BBC broadcaster Dame Jenny Murray for a very benign article she wrote in the Sunday Times. I saw an article about Laurel Hubbard cheating in women's weightlifting. I saw the news report of a convicted rapist named Craig Hoxwell, who'd absconded and who was referred to in the news as Lisa Hoxwell and as she and her, even though he wasn't said to be a trans woman. It was said that he may be living as a man or a woman, and when he was finally caught, he was found to have been living as a man. I think the biggest shock was seeing the TERF is a slur website with its hundreds of screenshots of the most grotesque misogynistic abuse I'd ever seen online against those they were calling TERFs. I didn't consider myself one at the time, but obviously I do now. Then I learnt, to my horror, that our right-wing Tory government was proposing a reform of our Gender Recognition Act in favour of self-identification of gender. Over the next few months, I read loads of books and articles, including many by trans activists and sympathisers. I read this one, which is very pro-trans, but it is very informative. And I read this pile of shite by the insufferable Julia Serrano. That helped me on my peak trans journey. I was on Twitter. I didn't engage with trans activists, but I would read their tweets. The more I read and heard from trans activists, the more appalled I was. And finally, on 13 September 2017, I went on my own to my very first meeting on anything to do with transgenderism. I knew nobody who was going. And it was while I was at the meeting place at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, where we'd been told to gather to receive the address of where the meeting was going to be, that I was assaulted by the three men. I'm not going to talk about it here because, as well as having blogged about it, I've made a comprehensive video showing what happened and an abridged version. I was okay after it. I wasn't badly hurt, but I was very angry, and I was to get a lot angrier over the days and weeks and months that followed when I saw all the lies about the incident and the defamation of me, a complete unknown, being promulgated across social media. Angrier still in April 2018 when 4 witnesses lied in court in defence of a woman beater. Only one of the men who attacked me was ever caught and charged and convicted of battery. That was, of course, Tara Wolff. Probably the person I remain most angry with was the judge, and not just because he tried to get me to refer to my violent attacker as she, but because he chose to believe the lying witnesses, even though there was no evidence to support their false allegations about me, and there was nothing to undermine my own account of what had happened, which was the whole and absolute truth. So after the assault on me, I channeled my anger into building the website, peaktrans.org, which I launched 3 months later in December 2017. Looking back at what I wrote on the front page by way of explanation, there's no doubt that I have changed my opinion since then. For example, in the first paragraph, I say, people can't help how they feel, and if they are so unhappy with their body and their lives that they feel they have to have surgery and or take hormones for the rest of their lives, I'm not going to judge them for that. Well, actually, that still holds true. I'm not going to judge people for having a psychological disorder or for falling prey to social media groomers or social contagion. It's their behaviour afterwards that I judge them on. But the next sentence, on the contrary, I try to empathise and show love and support to those I know personally who are in that position. No, that I will never do again. I will never support anyone transitioning. If I did know anyone wanting to do that, I would try to talk them out of it. And this is not a phobia. It is reasoned opposition to a catastrophic phenomenon. And that opposition is increasing thanks to the aggressive promotion of gender ideology and trying to compel our speech. People don't like being bullied and harassed, and they don't like seeing it happen to other people, particularly ones they admire and who they know to be kind and decent, like J.K. Rowling. The assault on me was nothing in comparison with all the other stuff that happened afterwards to me and to loads and loads of other people, some celebrities or high profile and many others who are not known at all. Trans activists, and I use that term for anyone who promotes gender ideology, whether they are active in the sense of going out and bullying feminists trying to meet, or trying to get people fired from their jobs, or whether they're just sad little keyboard warriors. These people and everyone who kowtows to them, whether they are in politics, in education, in the police, the judiciary, the humanist organisations I've been a member of, they have crushed whatever faith in humanity I had, and I will never, ever stop fighting them and what they stand for. That's all. Thanks for watching. Bye.